Good evening, everyone. It is a pleasure to see you all. I'm glad you all could join us this evening. My name is Tiara Thomas, class of 2012, and I currently proudly serve as president of the African American Alumni Association here at CWRU. It is my absolute pleasure to welcome you this evening. Just a little background. The African American Alumni Association, also known as Quad A, was officially established in October 2009. And our purpose really is to offer support and networking opportunities for African American alumni of CWRU. We also work to provide a forum for the university to recruit students and foster friendships amongst those associated with the university. So welcome and thank you for joining us for our first Profiles of Inclusive Excellence for this school year. Before we start our program, just a few housekeeping notes. So everyone is going to be muted by default. We do ask that you remain muted to limit any background noise during the program. And if you have any questions, please use the chat feature and we will do our best to get all of your questions answered. So that we know who you are, we welcome you to rename yourself by clicking on Participants, finding your name, and then using the More option and selecting Rename. Finally, we love to have you all here, and we ask that if you're able to turn your camera on so we can see your smiling faces as we have this amazing conversation this evening. And so with that, again, I'm happy to welcome you to Profiles of Inclusive Excellence, which is a virtual series in collaboration with the African American Alumni Association, the Office of Diversity, Equity, and Inclusive Engagement, and the Africana Studies program to highlight the work and research of our amazing African American faculty at CWRU. Our amazing host for this evening will be Dr. Heather Burton. She is Associate Vice President and Senior Director for Faculty and Institutional Diversity with CWRU, specializing in gender and racial equity. And with that, I turn it over to Dr. Burton.
Thank you, Tiara. Thank you so much. I am so excited tonight to kick off our first session for our Profiles of Inclusive Excellence. And as Tiara mentioned, I think what's important to highlight is that although this is the first for this academic year, we have been doing this as we're going into our third year, and we have not repeated faculty. So often we hear that there are no Black faculty on campus, and I, myself and Vipu Solomon, who's on the call, as well as those that I was working with Africana Studies, we wanted to highlight the Black faculty that were on campus because I was running into people and I was like, why don't people know that you're here, that you exist? And so we created this series, and this series has been an excellent opportunity to get to know our faculty. And so as we go throughout this conversation this evening, I do encourage you to ask questions in the chat. I will be reviewing the chat to answer questions. I will screen the questions. So if you're asking anything that's inappropriate of Dr. Mickel, you will not be able to ask that question. So just an FYI, I screen the questions before I actually ask them. But as we get started, Dr. Mickel, there is a thing that we do on Profiles of Inclusive Excellence. It's something that probably started because of me, my love for hip hop and my love for movies, is that we start with this particular idea or quote. And so I'm not sure if you're familiar with the movie Brown Sugar, and remember Sanaa Lathan and Taye Diggs. And all throughout that movie, the question was, when did you fall in love with hip hop? And it was this idea of going back to the roots of hip hop. And so we start that with profiles. And so the first question we throw out to you is, Dr. Mickel, when did you fall in love with dentistry?
Wow, that's a great question. So I'm really fortunate tonight that I have actually one of my first mentors, Dr. Francis Curd, here back when I was in high school and in college in Youngstown. I was interested in perhaps pursuing some field of medicine. I wasn't sure which one. And so, I went to different physicians and different podiatrists and optometrists and different doctors. Then I really finally went to a dentist and I talked to Dr. Francis Curd. And I found out that he went to Case Western Reserve University in Cleveland, Ohio, and he told me all about it. And from there, I just really started shadowing him. And I just really fell in love with dentistry from that point. And so here I am. So thank you, Dr. Curd, again.
So I know I've only done this on one other profiles, but I'm going to try it tonight since we have Dr. Curd with us. And typically I don't call on the audience for answers and questions, but since you're here, Dr. Curd, what was it about Dr. Mickel that stood out to you? What was it that caused you to take the mentoring role on when it came to Dr. Mickel?
All right. Well, when Dr. Mickel came into my office, he came in and he was wanted to know more about dentistry, and he was excited about it and different things. And I told him, I said, well, if you want to go to dental school and you want to go to Case Western Reserve, there's some things you need to do, and some things you need to realize that the work that he's going to have to put in, the effort that he's going to have to put in, and doing different things. But he was a sharp young man. When he came in, he was sharp. Okay, he was dressed sharp. He had a vision about what he wanted to do and some different things like that. And so I kind of took a liking to him. And from Youngstown, this was in Youngstown, Ohio, and Youngstown people kind of take care of Youngstown people. And I told him there was very few African American male dentists at that time, especially in Youngstown. There was only like 3 of us, I think, at that time. And so I would just encouraged him to do what he wanted to do and gave him the advice on what he needed to do. And he did it. That was the point. Sometimes you can mentor people and give them advice and they don't follow it. But I told him what to do. He went and did it. And he told me he wanted to go to Case Western Reserve. I said, it's not going to be a cakewalk. There's a lot of work you got to do. And he said, I can get it done. So there you go.
Yes, I love that. And thank you so much for sharing that. As I said, we often don't get an opportunity to hear from mentors on the call, but since you were here and since Dr. Mickel kind of called you out as a mentor, why not ask your opinion and your thoughts as it relates to Dr. Mickel? And it's interesting, Dr. Curd, you mentioned that he was sharply dressed. And I know, I got his, Katie and myself, we got his profile picture, his headshot for the profile. And when I saw his headshot, I was like, Dr. Mickel has on his Sunday best. He has on his Sunday best. And so, when you see that, there are certain things that stand out. So in that, Dr. Mickel, tell us about young Andre Mickel. Tell us about where you were raised, who were the influences in your early life, those sort of things, just touching on that.
Thanks for asking that question, because I really believe that the way I was raised and where I was raised prepared me for what I do today. So my father was actually in the Air Force, and many people don't know this, but I actually lived all over the world. So I was born in Omaha, Nebraska, right? So I am a Cornhusker, yes. And at the Strategic Air Command, right? They used to say that's the first place the Russians would bomb, right? But anyway, I was born there. And from there, I moved to Alaska. And I lived in Alaska for a while. And from there, I moved to Kansas. So I lived in the middle of the country where all the tornadoes were. And then from there, I moved to Washington, D.C. And then I lived in Annapolis. And then I was at the Naval Academy for 1 year. My father was in the Air Force, but he taught the Naval Academy for 1 year. Don't ask me what he taught. And then from there, I moved to Biloxi, Mississippi. So I was in the Deep South. And then from there, I moved to Spain. And I was in school from 7th grade to 10th grade in Zaragoza, Spain, which is about 7.5 hours northeast of Madrid. And I could actually look out and see the snow-capped Pyrenees Mountains every day as I sat in my classroom. I take that for granted now, but now I think about how wonderful that was. But really having an opportunity to travel and see so many different people, bless you, Heather, see so many different people and different cultures from around the world, I think has really prepared me for where I am today. In our residency program, we have had students from 5 different continents in a number of different countries from all over the world, every race, creed, religion you could imagine. And it's been nothing but a family tradition. So the one thing I would say is that just by virtue of me living in so many places, and that was actually difficult because we would move about every 3 years. And so it was easier when I was younger to make friends. But as you get older to those high school years, it gets a little bit more difficult to break into all the groups and cliques. But that really all prepared me for today to really be able to be comfortable around so many different people. And so it's just really an honor to be able to make people feel at ease and at home when they come here to Case Western from all over the world.
So for those who don't know on the call, tell us about your undergrad years. Where did you do your undergrad? Where did you do your undergrad?
So when I moved from Spain, we moved from Spain to Youngstown, Ohio, which was a major culture shock for me. And so I was there at Youngstown, and I went to Youngstown State, where I majored in biology and psychology. And from there, as I said, I met Dr. Kurd, who really mentored me early on. And so I spent my formative years there at Youngstown, and then I came to Case Western Reserve in Cleveland. And so I consider myself a Clevelander by default now. I've lived longer in Cleveland now than I've lived anywhere else. So I consider myself a Clevelander by default.
So what made you choose biology and psychology? Why those?
Yeah, so psychology was really more just an interest. I enjoyed it. I enjoyed, learning about people. So that was really just an interest. And after I took a few courses, I said, well, I might as well get a degree in that while I'm here. And of course, the biology was just a matter of, going to your dental or medical school. You typically major back then. You would either major in biology and minor in chemistry, or vice versa. And I actually had an emphasis more in microbiology. So I would have actually become a microbiologist, believe it or not. I don't think I've ever shared this verbally. I would have probably become a microbiologist had I not gone on to dental school.
So young Andre, what did young Andre want to be?
Yeah, young Andre really wanted to be a professional basketball player, or a professional baseball player, or a professional football player, because I was pretty good in sports. But I realized early on that the likelihood of me making it in any professional sports was not very likely. And in fact, when I statistically looked at it, I said, I have a better chance of being a doctor than I do of being an NBA player. So, I just decided to kind of pull back on the sports and start paying more attention to those books, et cetera. I also thought I would go into the Air Force, as my father was a career Air Force person. That never happened, though I did almost make it into the Navy.
So explain that, almost make it into the, tell us a little bit more about almost.
Yeah, so when I was in dental school, our dean at the time, Geza Terazami, and by the way, let me just shout out my dean, Dean Chance, who's been another great mentor, and he and I both share another mentor, as Dr. Kerr does, Dr. Jefferson Jones, who is probably the ultimate mentor of all of us. So greetings to my dean. But Geza Terazami came to me one day and said, you'd be a great military officer. You'd be a great officer in the Navy. You can wear that nice white uniform and you look really good in it. You can travel the world, and, you'll be an officer in the Navy. And, it's the greatest thing. I'm sure you saw the movie, Officer and Gentleman, and he's going on and on. And yeah, that sounds really good. Well, there was another guy in my class, Bobby Caruso, who had been in the Marines for a while, and he also approached him. So Bobby and I both said, yeah, we're going to join the Navy. So I went down to the Naval Recruiting Office. I think that was my senior year of dental school. And I walked in and I sat down, and the guy came out and says, no, you can't sit there. And I said, what do you mean? He says, no, you sit over here. You can't sit with those guys. You're going to be an officer. And so I said, no, I want to sit with these guys. Said, no, you come. So that was the first introduction. So I go in, and they tell me all about how I would love the Navy and I'll travel the world and I can do a residency, and it's going to be a wonderful life. And I go back and I pick up the pen, and all I have to do is sign. And just as I'm about ready to sign, something inside of me said, let me just wait a little longer. And I put the pen down and I walked out, and I said, let me call you next week. And I walked out of there and I never called them back. And so I never went into the Navy. Meanwhile, my good friend Bobby did go into the Navy. Well, 3 years later, I'm doing my residency in endodontics at Case Western. So I was in a specialty program, and he comes back to Cleveland to see me. And he says, Andre, that was the best thing you never did. And I said, what do you mean? He says, I ended up in the Persian Gulf, in the middle of the Persian Gulf, doing amalgams on the bottom of this ship. I never saw a port. That was the best thing you did. But here you are at Case Western, you're doing endodontics. You're sitting back here, you're having a great time. You have your own cubicle. You're going to be an endodontist. He says, I think I want to do that. And he actually did go on to become an endodontist as well. So we laugh about that to this day.
So what I was thinking about is that how you gave a shout out to some of your mentors on the call. How important do you think it is for students such as yourself, with the mentors that you had, to see mentors that look like you and that share demographics that you are?
Yeah, it's really critical. I would say that, I would not be an endodontist were it not for Dr. Jefferson Jones, who was probably the first African-American endodontist in the Midwest of the USA. And he was the chairman of our program at Case Western, probably from taught most of the dentists endodontics that went to Case, throughout the United States. So Dr. Jefferson Jones was really like a father to me, a mentor. Of course, he was a brother times three. And so mentors are critical, just to see others who look like you, who seem like you, who share, your background. This is really critical. So I just can't thank, Dr. Jones enough for what he did for me. And because of that, our dean, Dr. Kenneth Chance, is also an endodontist. So we both are really thankful to have had a great mentor, and he lives through both of us still.
Yeah, and that's excellent to see a legacy passed on. And often we take for granted what that legacy looks like. And so to be able to give that type of recognition to Dr. Curd for both you and Dean Chance is wonderful. When you think about your role within CWRU, what is the most exciting thing about your role within CWRU?
I think that's easy. For me, when my students come in, the first lecture I give them, I tell them about what's important to me. And I first tell them first God, then family, and then endodontics. It's important. It's not the most important thing. So I think it's just the family relationships that we make. All of my residents or students, I consider them my sons and daughters, their children or my grandchildren. So it's all family, right? And it's all love. And so we really enjoy this. And it's especially nice when these are people who are coming from all over the world, and we all come together really just to see, how much we're really alike, right? It's not so much the differences, but how much we really are alike. Let me just say, when I was in dental school at Case Western, I had two roommates. One was a Jewish, Canadian, Russian fellow, and the other one was an Indian guy from first generation from India. And no one could understand why we were such good friends and how we lived together. And, so here's my one friend. He was born in Russia. He lived in Canada. He was Jewish. The other guy's from India. And, dinner times were really exciting. Let me just say that. But we really found out really how much we were alike, right? And how the similarities, not so much the differences, and how we make such a big deal about some differences that aren't really aren't that important. So I think just the family relationships I've made since I've been here have been really enjoyable.
So I know we serve on committees together, and with that, when you think about that, what is it that makes you want to make a difference at Case Western Reserve?
I think we want our school to obviously be the best university in the world, but also we want people to come here and really feel comfortable, feel heard, feel able to share their experiences. And so anything I can do to help people feel more at ease and more at home and more comfortable, more loved, I think I want to do that. It's really about sharing the values of love, really, that's what it comes down to for me.
Yeah, and I think what's interesting is that, as you mentioned, you talk about God being first. And I think that exudes in who you are, and especially when we think of characteristics such as love, because God is love. And so that's a part of your identity. And it's interesting as I think about this. I saw one thing on your bio, and this idea of clinical therapeutics. And so I know that you are, I did a little research beforehand. I know that you attend New Community Bible Fellowship. So for the lay people out there, tell us, what does that mean?
Clinical therapeutics?
Yeah.
Yeah, so clinical therapeutics really was my basic research focus. So I'm an endodontist, so I do root canals, the dreaded root canal, right? So these are infections coming from teeth that leak out into the bone, that cause bony infections that can travel to other areas of the body and cause issues. So clinical therapeutics are really those procedures or entities that are able to make for doing better clinical endodontics. So my main focus, remember I said I would have become a microbiologist. So my first focus really in research was doing some different microbiology type studies where we were looking at how to eradicate certain types of bacteria from infected root canals, or how to use certain irrigants or medicaments to better kill bacteria, or now leading up to my latest thing is really using the surgical operating microscope which is think about those who do ophthalmology or neurology and do brain surgery. They usually are looking through a microscope, and you can see that on a monitor that's there. We use that in endodontics. And so that particular instrument enables us to better treat patients, which means that patients heal better and faster. and are able to preserve their teeth and be healthier. We know people who keep their teeth live on average 10 years longer.
Really? Did anyone else on the call know that? Or was it just me that didn't know that? I didn't know that. So why is?
Well, it makes sense, right? If you think about it, if you have your teeth, you're able to bite and chew your food better, which means you can digest your food better, which means that you're better able to have better health because of what you're eating and drinking. Obviously, our teeth supports our face, etc. And we know that there's actually a relation between our teeth and tooth infection and even sinus problems. One of the things that I treat many times is something called maxillary sinusitis of endodontic origin. So it's really a sinus issue, but it's coming from infected teeth. And so by taking care of our teeth or treating tooth infection, we can prevent infection in other organs and other areas.
This is enlightening. I had no idea. You hear certain statistics, you hear things, but to think about. Okay, so I have a question for you, Dr. Mickel. And this is the question that I debate with my dentist. So this is not on the record. This was not actually part of our questions. But I have a question as to why is it that I've noticed when people begin to age, they lose their bicuspids. And that's the tooth that goes away.
Yeah, so your bicuspids are probably the smallest teeth that do the greatest amount of biting. So usually your teeth all the way in the back, your molars are larger and bigger, so they can withstand the force. But your bicuspids are the teeth that not quite as big, but yet we're grinding and chewing. And like any other part of our body, our hips wear out, our knees wear out, our elbows wear out, right? We have to wear glasses, right? Your teeth begin to wear out as well. Interestingly, Heather, during COVID period, many people were under a lot of tension and pressure and anxious. And we found that because of that, people were cracking and breaking a lot more of their teeth as well, and ended up needing to have either more endodontics done or having teeth removed because of this. There was a great influx of people who had we call them cracked tooth syndrome or vertical root fractures, just from the tension and stress and anxiety of what was going on during the pandemic. So really interesting.
Is that why I cracked my tooth?
It could be.
The stressors of Case Western Reserve. CP Solomon, I need a new job. Because I actually did crack my tooth during COVID, biting down on a fork, a plastic fork. But so there's the question in the chat, and I want to circle to that question where Robert Solomon asks, did you become fluent in Spanish while in Spain?
Well, I want to be careful how I answer this question because I know my wife in the Dominican Republic is listening and she speaks Spanish to me all the time. So I was able to speak Spanish. I took Spanish in junior high. I took Spanish in high school. I took Spanish in college. And I certainly was able to speak Spanish when I did live in Spain, though I went to an American school, but I could, hang out with all the other kids. I will say I have kind of lost my Spanish because I was trying to learn a few other languages, Hebrew and Greek. So interestingly, Hebrew kind of sounds like Spanish to me. And so when I was speaking in my Hebrew class, all of a sudden I'd start speaking Spanish and they would laugh at me. So I kind of lost that somewhere. But Robert, I can get around though, Robert.
So remember, we are taking questions from the chat. So if you have any questions for Dr. Mickel, please put those in the chat and we will get to those questions. I was thinking about your childhood and growing up. And thinking about just the diversity within your life experiences and how that has impacted who you are. When you think about that type of diversity, how do you encourage that within the institution?
Yeah, that's excellent. So one of the ways is, I'm really proud that in our program of endodontics, well, let me just say this. When I first took over as a program director in 96, most of the people who were in the endodontics program were probably Case Western grads, and they probably lived in Cleveland. They're probably from Cleveland, right? So one of the things I did when I started was to purposefully begin to really look around the world to bring in really just some different thoughts and philosophies about the way things are done. And so because of this diverse background I had, I was able to really incorporate bringing in people from different countries. Of course, I would be invited to speak. And as I spoke more and more in different countries, more people knew about Case Western Reserve and knew who we were. And they know that we do encourage international students to come to our specialty programs. And so, as I said, we've had now students from from 5 different continents and probably 30 or 40 countries that have come here to Case Western Reserve. That didn't happen by accident. I really was trying to purposefully look for people outside of Cleveland and even of the U.S. to come here to make for a really diverse pool of applicants.
Yeah, I love it. And I just love the genuineness that you have, not only for your students, but also how highly you've spoken of your mentors tonight. And it speaks volumes that if all of our faculty could have that same type of love, we may be a lot further at Case Western Reserve University. But as I tell my students, that's the Dr. Burtonism. That's not the view of Case Western Reserve University. So when you think about, I know we mentioned kind of the order of God being first, but what are some other things that are important to you?
Well, I mentioned family, right? And so family is key. When I was younger, when my kids were still, young, before my youngest is now, by the way, at Case Western Reserve in his 4th year of dental school. So amen to being done with tuition after this year. But at any rate, family was important then. When they played baseball, I was the baseball coach. When they played football, I was the football coach. So that was always important to me. When I had meetings, as often as I could, I would host meetings at my home so that my family could be involved. I have a men's Bible study I host in my home, then so that my sons could also see other men, etc. But I would say I'm a sports enthusiast. I do enjoy. I love sports, and I love doing that as well. And right now, I think one of the things I enjoy most is in my spare time. I had a chance in the past 10 years to work on another degree, a Master of Divinity, and now I'm working on a doctorate degree in transformational leadership. And so a lot of my time really goes to that right now. But that really has helped me because many of the courses involved there were things like cultural leadership, how to be a good leader with people from different cultures, and how to really show respect and love for other people and other cultures. So that's really been useful for me.
So why more education?
Yeah, I think you can never learn enough. I think I'll probably be a lifelong learner. I'm thinking, my wife is like, what degree will you get next? So I'm thinking maybe I'll get an MBA also. But nevertheless, I think it's really been a lifelong learner. I just really want to know more. And it's interesting, as I teach more, I find out not that I know more, but I find out how much I don't know, right? And so it really forces me to continue to learn. I never want to get to the point that I feel like I have it all figured out and I know everything. I don't. So I teach so I practice better, and I practice so I teach better. And in my mind, I've yet to really do a good root canal. I tell my students, I've yet to do a really good treatment. I'm still looking for the ultimate. So I'm constantly striving to improve and do better, and be a role model and mentor to others to show that, we always should be lifelong learners.
Yeah, and it's as you talk about that, I think about just kind of the things that lifelong learning and how when you engage in that type of learning, it does develop you as faculty, specifically with working with students. I remember I had a mentor when I first started at the University of Akron, and I had just finished my PhD, and I told her, I said, if it's not a pamphlet, I'm never reading again. I said, I will not be picking up another book. And all she did, when you think about mentoring, is she looked at me and she said, you're doing a disservice to your students.
Mm.
And that hit me like a dagger. And I was like, wow, I never thought about it that way, in the disservice that I'm doing to the students. And so in that, what is it that you want your students to remember you by?
Wow, that's a great question. Well, I think the first thing that comes to mind is, that, I'm a man of faith, and that, I believe that God has placed me here for a purpose, and that we all have a purpose, and that really we should find that purpose and the best of our ability, to fulfill purpose. I think the other thing that I like all of my students to remember is that it's not about me, but it's about everything that God can do through me to help others, right? So we should really learn to reach out to help others and give back wherever they are. To that end, one of the areas that I've really been focusing on lately is compassion. And there's a lot of research on compassion, even in the medical literature. You know, when doctors show compassion and empathy, patients heal faster, they have shorter recovery times, they're more compliant, they're more open and willing to share information so that we're better able to diagnose them. Compassion goes a long way. And there's actually a crisis of compassion and empathy right now. And we found that for students, especially in the health professions, that as they go through their years in dental school and medical school, that compassion levels actually go down. And they're busy trying to get requirements done and finish their rounds and resources, et cetera. And so we've been really focusing lately for the last 2 months really on compassion and looking for compassion opportunities when our patients come in and when they come to see us. And, you know, yeah, they're coming in and we're going to do surgery or something on them, but just acknowledge, you know, their issues and their concerns and their family and their loved ones and what they're thinking about. And that just goes a long way. So just remembering that it's not just a tooth we're treating, there's a person attached to that tooth and we're treating it.
Yeah, exactly. I saw a hand and I'm going to come to that hand in 1 second. I just want to follow up with a question that was kind of along the lines that we were talking about. And it says, was it intentional? And how do you develop the family feeling that the endodontics department has with alumni, residents, and staff?
Yeah, I think it's just from the very beginning, when they first come in, just letting them know that, you know, once you come here, you are a part of our family and we are bringing you into our family. And it's not just saying it, but then it's showing love. So I tell my residents, you know, if there's something you have to do with your child, if they have a play to go to, or if there's some other issue, you have to go to the school, you know, just let me know. That's important, right? We said God, family, and then endodontics. If there's a special celebration the family's having, and if at all possible, you know, I want them to go and be a part of that. So it's not just saying that we're family, but it's really treating them like family and then following through in a tangible, concrete fashion that they see that you really care about them as a person and as a true family member. That means inviting them to my home. That means sharing, you know, my family with them. That means my wife is their mother. So, you know, it's all about sharing everything that we have. So it's really an intentional thing I do from the beginning. And it's not difficult. It just really, at this point, that's how I really feel. So it's authentic, but it's a nice thing.
Yeah. So a quick question. Were you raised in the church?
I was, yes. Yes, I was.
Yeah, VP Salm was on the call. He knows probably where I'm going with this. The impact that the church, I think, has on us as professionals and what we learned. And a lot of that is that love, that compassion, and getting it done. I talk about that all the time, of that type of impact. What additional impacts do you think the church had on you in terms of who you are today?
Yeah, I think it's really about being authentic and open and transparent when I can, you know, to share my own personal struggles and issues, to say that, you know what, you aren't the first one to have this problem. I can think of a number of residents who had some serious personal problems and they came to me and they felt comfortable coming to me. And, you know, and I actually share with them, you know, I went through the exact same thing, you know, 20 years ago. And they were amazed that I would just share that with them. Like I would be open to share that with them. But I know that I've grown through that. I'm a better man because of that. And so I think it's that authenticity and transparency to help others, where I'm showing where my brokenness, where I was broken. How can I use that now to help encourage someone else? I may look like I have it all together, but I wasn't always, you know, together. I'm still not, quite frankly, as many people in this call could attest to. But nevertheless, you know, it's a process, right? And so just there's light at the end of the tunnel, and just keep going. And I'm going to walk with you through that. I remember a number of residents. I said, you know what, we're gonna one day we're gonna look back and we're gonna be able to maybe we won't laugh about it, but we can certainly smile about it and say we thought we'd never get through that. And so I'm just proud to say there are a number of people that every time we see each other, we say, remember back when we thought you'd never get through that, and here we are.
Yeah. And I think being transparent with students is so important. And especially for them to see that, you know, we weren't always where we are. We didn't, you know, and I tell students all the time, I didn't set out to have a PhD. I didn't even set out to have master's degrees. I was going to do the bachelor's and that was it. But because of mentors, the path was different. And then also because of my faith and walking through doors that were open. I want to take the question from our audience. The name in the screen says Debbie. And so, Debbie, I'm going to call on you.
Here it is. Good evening. I'm on my wife's iPad. My name is Mike Weber. I'm a 1996 graduate of Case Western Reserve Dental School. And Dr. Mickel, if I may, when Heather asked a question about losing her premolar, my first thought was the mesial concavity. And do you consider the bruxism a greater impact than the mesial concavity of the premolars?
Let's just say they both play a critical role in that.
That's sidestepping the issue pretty nice. It's great to see you. I appreciate it.
Good to see you, brother.
Yes. So thank you for that. Hello, Dr. Mickel. Some years ago, I had the pleasure of being your patient for a root canal.
Uh-oh.
It was a very stressless experience. I know I should have made up something in the chat and not made it easy like this, but I won't do that to you. It was a very stressless experience. The lighting, etc., of your office had such a calming effect. Can you speak to that?
Yeah, so I have something called appealing to the senses, appealing to all of the senses. And the first one is just smell, or the aroma. And this actually started when I was a resident. When I was in my second year of residency, we did a study, and we found when there's certain aromas emitted into the air during root canal procedures, patients actually perceive less anxiety and pain. And that smell was lavender, by the way, which we know now it's certainly anti-anxiety. So I thought, wow, this is great. This is great. So, I should just put lavender everywhere in my office, right? Well, I hate lavender, so I didn't use lavender. But I do like the smell of cookies and cupcakes baking, right? So if you think about when you go to grandma's house, the smell of nice cupcakes or cookies baking, right? So the first thing we do in the morning is we have these candles we light that smell like freshly baked cupcakes or cookies. So it's that smell that reminds you about being at grandma's house. Everything's okay at grandmother's house. You're not getting a root canal. I'm not cutting into your sinuses. You're just visiting grandma, right? So smell, it's aromatherapy. Then there's lighting. And so when you think about a nice ambient restaurant, when you go to a nice restaurant, the lighting is dim, you have a nice corner and it's just dim lighting. It just sets the romantic mood. So dim lighting is important. But also there's usually some nice music playing, right? So soft, nice music. It could be classical jazz. For some reason, there's something about Frank Sinatra. I can't figure that out yet, but Frank Sinatra and root canals, wherever I lecture around the world, I mention this. I was in Saudi Arabia one year and I mentioned, there's something about when you play Frank Sinatra and root canals, patients just really do well. And they all said, yeah, you're right. And I'm thinking, even in Saudi. So, but at any rate, so music, right? Soft music. And then there's touch. So sometimes we have these massagers that we'll put in the chair that you kind of get it back. Would you like a back massage today? Right. And then, of course, there's taste, right? And that means we just want to offer patients something to eat or drink before they come in, before you hand paperwork, into their face. So what we're really saying is that we care about you as a person. You're not just another patient. We care about you as a person first. How is your day going? Right. So I call that appealing to the senses. So anything I can do to, first of all, not smell or look like a dental office, I want to do that because there are certain smells that conjure up bad feelings, right? When I walk into the hospital, just that medicinal smell, it just conjures up a bad, or when you go into a dental office that smells like, we call it zinc oxide eugenol. Dentists would know what that is, but certain materials we use in a dental office, it reminds them of that bad experience they had in the dental office, and many people had that. So anything I can do to avoid smelling like that, I want to do that because we know that there is the olfactory nerve. Certain smells do bring about certain thoughts or remind you of certain things. If you think about a nice perfume you might have wore on a nice, night that you went out, and every time you smell that perfume, you remember that night. Well, it's the same thing here in a dental office. I believe that, we just want to have a nice, sweet smelling aroma that reminds them of something good and pleasant. So you're not coming for this. You're just coming to visit grandma.
I love that. So VP Solomon, when you can't find me during the day, I will be taking a nap in Dr. Mickel's office. And you don't think about just the small things when you talk about the senses that actually make it a better experience, specifically when we're talking about someone having a root canal. My dentist doesn't do that. I'm going to have to tell him next time I go, you need to change your whole style within your office. So as we continue the conversation, I do want to say that if there are questions from the audience, please do not hesitate to put them in the chat or raise your hand to unmute. And we will call on you to answer those or to ask those questions. When you think about your experience, and this can be from childhood to young adult to where you are now, what has been one of the biggest challenges that you had to overcome?
Yeah, that's pretty easy to answer. So probably about 13 years ago, I didn't want to, but I actually went through a divorce. And that was probably the most painful time of my life. It was painful for a number of reasons, just as I thought about my children and what they were facing and dealing with. It was something that I didn't want. And so, through that, I actually, as kind of a catharsis, I wrote a book that I kind of just put my own thoughts in the book, and I was all over the place. I tell people that book was for me, so if it doesn't make sense to you, it's okay, right? The next one I'll write for you. But just going through that, and since I'm being transparent, let me just share that was actually one of my residents was dealing with a divorce a number of years back, and he came to me and was really broken. And he didn't know I had gone through that. And I shared with him. He's like, what? I mean, I see you now. And, you're like, I would never have known that. Right. And so, just the fact that I can take something like that and use it to help others now as they're going through. And, and I can happy to say I've been very happily married, now for many years again. So, that was probably one of the most challenging, difficult things. I was totally out of control. I am a type A and I'm an alpha too. So, we tend to want to be type A and control everything. And I just had no control. And really, it was just like I had to kind of just let go and, do what I could do and do my part and, really just, submit to my pastor and do what I could do in that regard. So.
Yeah, and God getting your attention of what submission looks like when we try to control every situation.
No doubt.
So on the other side of that, what has been one of your greatest accomplishments?
My greatest accomplishments? Well, I think not so much for me, but I like to just think about my residents, my students I've had in the past. And one of the things I'm really proud of just lately in the past 4 years, there's been something called the Endolit exam, which is basically an examination that deals with a lot of basic sciences and the science and art of endodontics and scientific literature. And graduating residents across the United States, take this examination, and they actually rank the residents. They actually get a rank from 1 to whatever the number is. And the first year we did this, which is 4 years ago, we had someone who was number 1 in the nation, number 6 in the nation, number 9 in the nation, and 16. And for the past 4 years that we've done, just last year, our residents ranked number 2 and number 3 in the nation. The year before that, we were number 6 and 9. So every year, I think our residents from our program have really shown that, first of all, they're listening and they're studying. So I think that's been one of the greatest accomplishments, is just to see that my residents, my students who teach me as much as I teach them, by the way, that they are excelling. And then not only that, when they leave here, many of them are going out and they all do well clinically. They're all involved in teaching other places. Many of them have become leaders. I have someone in Taiwan who's a program director, just like I am here at Cleveland. I have someone at Boston who's a chairman and program director, just like I am here in Cleveland. I have someone in the University of Maryland who's a director at Cleveland in Maryland as well. So just to see that I've had residents who've gone on to do what I do. And they always say, we want to be like you. And I say, don't be like me, be better.
Better than me.
And I only pick residents, I tell them, I only pick residents smarter than me. So all of you are already smarter than me. So just take the little bit I can give you and continue to grow and learn and study and just be the best that you can be. I always think of the four keys to success. The four keys to success. Number one is homework. You got to do your homework. Be prepared so you can be prepared to take advantage of an opportunity when it comes. So often, opportunities come, but people aren't prepared to take advantage of it, and then they want to blame it on someone else. So you got to do your homework. I still do homework. I did homework for this. Second is listen, right? Listen to those who are trying to teach you. Listen to those who know more than you. Listen to those who are trying that they are already where you're trying to be, right? So often we don't want to listen to people. So listen. And on the same time, at the same token, don't listen to those who are telling you the wrong thing to do. And then the next thing is no, and that's simply say no to drugs. I mean, what can I say about that is, take care of your mind, your body, and your soul, right, to be the best again. And then finally, especially for me, after I've done my homework and I've listened and I've said no to drugs, then finally pray. I mean, to be the best that I can be, I have to pray. I need all the help I can get. So I want to pray that God will give me all the help that I need to do whatever I need to do, because I can't do it alone.
Yeah, exactly. You can't do it alone. And for anyone that wanted to jot those four things down, it's homework, listen, know, and pray. And I think those are concepts to live by, especially when we talk about listen, saying no, and praying. More importantly, listening, because I think when we get to a certain place, often we forget that there's a need to listen, and there's a need to actually engage in intentional listening. So I love those four things. We have a question from the chat. Hi, Jackie. I appreciate your kind words for Dr. Jefferson Jones, who left a legacy with his mentees like you. What do you want your legacy to be at CWRU and in life?
So only Jackie would ask a question like that. First of all,
that was going to be my last question, but Jackie just took like my last question, so I might as well just.
First of all, hello to Jackie. She is my sister, and I love her dearly. And hello to Sylvia, mom. Lasting legacy. Wow. I think Dr. Jones really laid the legacy down, and I just really followed after him, making sure that people have an opportunity to get a chance to do the things that we do. I always used to say, he opened the doors and knocked the trees down, and I kind of came in and laid down the asphalt. So I guess now the person coming behind me, I guess, really to just build up the not only our specialty of endodontics, but also just worldwide, our network of people that we've created people that have graduated from our program, that have gone around the world, that they would just continue to wave the banner high for Case Western and what we believe in, and how we teach and how we love, and the legacy that we left. I mentioned that I went to Saudi Arabia. One of my residents is there. He's a professor there at Qasim University in Bareda, in the middle of Saudi Arabia, and I had the fortunate ability right before COVID to go there for 3 days to give a lecture. So, the legacy, Dr. Jones's legacy, is continuing through myself and Dr. Chance, by the way, and Dr. Kurd, a number of other people. So, yeah, I would say Dr. Jones was all about inclusiveness. He was all about making sure everyone was treated with justice and fairness and had an opportunity to excel. Just, all we need is a chance, right? And so I think that's the legacy that I'd like to leave.
Yeah, and I think that's exactly what you're doing, is making sure that students have a chance. If you had to give us 3 words to describe you, what would those 3 words be? And they can be independent of each other, or they can be a 3-word sentence.
So I feel like my secretary Heidi told you that, because I always ask everyone at their residency interview, give me 3 words to describe yourself, right? So you hear all these words. So 3 words. Let's see. I would first say, I like to believe I'm faithful. Yeah, faithful to my wife, faithful to my students, faithful to my friends, faithful to even people who don't know me, just that I'm faithfully doing what I should do, that when I say I'm going to do it, I'm going to do it. So faithfulness. I'd like to believe I'm a loving person, right? The greatest commandment, love God and love your neighbors. So, and that's irrespective of who you are or where you're from. And in fact, it's those who are most different from us that we need to probably show love to the most, right? And then thirdly, faithfulness, love. I would say how about needy? I'm needy, right? I recognize that I can't do at this point, I recognize I can't do everything alone, that I need help, right? I still need mentors. I need to help those behind me. I need to help those who are ahead of me. So I'm going to say needy.
Yeah, and listening tonight, you have dropped so much and so many pearls of wisdom. I go back to those 4 things with the homework, the listen, the know, and the pray, and then now these 3. And although they're words to describe you, I think that if we all encompass those and embrace those words, it would allow us to move a lot further. Specifically in terms of creating inclusive inclusive environments. And so thinking about being faithful, thinking about love, and thinking about needy. And so it's great. Dr. Dean Chance, I just want to read this because I think it's important that when you hear great words from someone that is the dean of the school, and Dean Chance says, "I am grateful to you, Dr. Mickel, for your leadership, compassion, intelligence, and sacrifice. You are the best, Ken." And I think that speaks volumes when your dean is on the call and supporting this interview. And so that speaks volumes right there all in itself. Kind of to wrap us up, close us out for the evening, I do want to ask, what is it, you say now that you've been a Cleveland resident, and so you've been here longer than you've been any other place. So what is it that you like to do in Cleveland?
What do I like to do in Cleveland? Well, as odd as it may sound, I really enjoy coming to, I'm not just saying this because it's Case Western, but really come to Case Western to be with my residents. In fact, I tell my residents that I work for them. I said, I work for you, right? And I don't want my dean, I guess he hears that now, but I work for the dean too. But I work for you, right? We're here because of you, our students, right? Our dental students, our residents, the students are here. And so really just spending time with them is one of the things I really enjoy. I told them if I could have lunch with you every day, I would. If I could just hang out with you every day, I would do that. So that's one thing. Another thing in Cleveland is you mentioned my church, New Community Bible Fellowship. I am very active there. So I really enjoy that. I'm active there in the prayer ministry and the men's ministry and the divorce ministry and the pastor leadership ministry. So I really enjoy being there in life group ministry. I really enjoy being there and doing that as well. Of course, I'd love to say I enjoy being at the Cavs and the Browns games, and I do. In fact, I want to take credit for the Browns' last 2 wins. Yeah, I have a theory. The theory is if I don't watch, they will win.
They will win.
So the last game, it was toward the end, and they had a chance and they lost the ball. I said, I'm not going to watch. I'm going to turn the TV off, and I turned it off, and of course they won. And the game before, the same thing as that. So I really enjoy our sports things that we have. We have some really great, actually, beaches in Cleveland, believe it or not, that I enjoy. So I love going to the metro parks and walking there. I live by Horseshoe Lakes. Usually I go to Horseshoe Lake every morning before I go to the university, and it's I call it my meeting place. I meet God there every morning and just take a walk. So I really enjoy some of our metro parks and that are here as well.
Yeah, and so I'm listening to you, and I was going to ask a question kind of to wrap things up, just to give people an idea, but you touched on it. When we talk about balance and finding that balance between your everyday work and in life, and we joke when we talk about gender, there's no such thing as work-life balance, but in that, how do you find, or I should say, are there any other things besides the walk, your mornings with God, in which you find solitude and you find peace and the things that keep you grounded in order to do the daily work that you do?
Well, absolutely. One of them is just accountability, right? Having people who are accountable for us, to us, and for us, right? So, I obviously have a men's life group I told you about. By the way, we're called True Men. And so we really do life together. right? So these are men that whatever concern, whatever problem we're having, we can always call another person and they can give us an honest assessment of kind of where we are and, what's right, not just what you want to hear, but really going to tell us, the truth. So I think, having accountability in people who love us enough to tell us the truth, when we're wrong or that when we need to turn another way.
Yeah, I love that. I'll read this last comment from the chat, and then we'll close out for the evening with any last words that you may have, Dr. Mickel. So if you have anything else, I will give you the floor to give that in just one moment. But I thought that this was important to read from Martina. Martina says, thanks, Dr. Mickel, for being so compassionate and faithful during all times. You are the best mentor ever.
Wow.
And I will let you close on that note.
Yeah, well, thank you, Martina. That means so much to me. Martina is from Egypt, and we've had a number of students that have come from Egypt, and so I'm really pleased again that one of the best legacies I think that really we have is that just people coming from all around the world to little old Cleveland who are coming for a common purpose and goal, and we see that we're all very, quite frankly, similar. We all bleed the same. We all have the same basic needs. And we all need to feel loved and needed and heard. And so I think that's really been an incredible journey for me. We always say, by the way, that when we could go somewhere in the world right now and someone in our program would know how to order us food, find somewhere for us to sleep and get us back home. Someone would be able to speak the language, right? So that's the benefit of having just really world travelers, people from all over the world coming here to Cleveland. And that all began and really ends. Again, I just want to go back to my first original mentor, of course, Dr. Kerr, but really Dr. Jefferson Jones, who was like the ultimate mentor to so many people, and who, by the way, for years was the head or leader of the African American faculty and staff here at Cleveland as well. So really, I can't thank Dr. Jones enough for all that he's done for me and so many other people. And I would not be here if it weren't for people like him. In and of myself, I couldn't have done anything. And so I thank God that he's provided people who love me unconditionally, who shared with me, who gave me an opportunity, and who now have given me an opportunity to give others an opportunity. And I just pray that I can be the man of God that I should be, that others can follow after and feel good about the life that they've led.
And so I asked this last question just because it was posed, but what does CIB stand for? I guess in your private practice, CIB, endodontics. So if you can just tell us what CIB stands for.
CIB stands for conscientious, informative, and best. So conscientious, I don't want to do anything to anyone else that I would not want to do to my own mother. And in fact, we teach our residents that, the mother litmus test. Before they do anything to any patient, they have to ask themselves a question. And the question is really simple. If this were your mother, whom you love and adore, is this exactly what you would do for her as you're going to do for that patient? And it's that simple, right? If it's no, then you're doing the wrong thing. Now, it's still yes, still check with me before you do it. And then inform, right? We want to inform people to the best of their ability what we're going to do, how we're going to do it, why we're going to do it, and whatever language they need to understand it. And then B is simply this. Hey, give your best effort at everything you do. Give your best effort at everything you do.
Yeah, so thank you, Dr. Mickel, Andre Mickel, who has enlightened us this evening that there are pearls of wisdom. I want you all to remember homework, listen, know, pray, thinking about being faithful, love, and needy. Also thinking about what's the legacy that you'll leave. What's the legacy that you will leave during your work? And it may not be at Case Western Reserve University, but within the community. And Dr. Kurd, I may get in trouble for this, as I usually am always in trouble, but I would like to extend an invitation since you were the person who organized the Black faculty or part of the Black faculty and staff resource group. Historically, tomorrow we have a celebration from 4 to 6 in Jolly Scholar. And so any alumni that are on the call, I would love to see you there, and I will extend that invitation. And if you have any questions about that, you can reach out to myself, Tiara, or Sarah Lyons or Katie on the call for that. So again, I thank you all for being with us this evening. I will turn things back over to Tiara to close us out for the evening.
Just send me an email on that.
Okay, I definitely will.
All right. Thank you all so much for joining, Dr. Mickel. Thank you for providing just such amazing insight. I got so much out of this call. So thank you for taking the time to be here with us this evening. And a special thank you to the Office for Diversity, Equity, and Inclusive Engagement. So we hope that you will join us. We have 4 more of these scheduled for the years, or we have a few more of these scheduled for the year, and our next one is on November 20th with Dr. Adrian Fletcher. So more information will be coming out about that, but we hope that you can join us as well. And of course, if you are interested in learning more about the African American Alumni Association, you can search us on the CASE website at case.edu/alumni, or you can find us on Facebook if you search Case Western Reserve University African American Alumni Association. So with that, we thank you all again for joining. We hope to see you next time and have a wonderful evening.